Hey again, everyone. I just wanted to hop on here and say thank you so much for all your feedback that I've received from everyone. It's really great to hear that my story is impacting so many people and that everyone is going, through kind of like their own version of what I've been talking about. And my continued journey of self-improvement, I wanted to make this video and kind of talk about what I'm learning in regards to what it means to be vulnerable and how to deal with shame. And again, this is kind of like the beginning of my journey, and so I'm learning about this piece by piece. From the podcast that I've been listening to, they mentioned one of the books that I started reading last week. It's called Daring Greatly, by an author. Her name is Brene Brown. It has everything to do with vulnerability and shame. The average person, we go through day by day, not really realizing that we are, that we have like a sense of vulnerability or shame in a given situation. And so like kind of like a simple example would be like when we're in school, and doesn't really matter if you're in grade school, graduate school, and an instructor asks you a question or asks the class a question, and you're like, I know that answer. I know that answer in your mind. You're just like, oh, I want to answer this question. I want to answer the question, but you won't raise your hand to answer the question because you're just too scared of what if you are wrong. What are other people going to say if you're wrong? And then what ends up happening is someone else answers the question correctly. They get the credit for it. They get the emotional satisfaction for it. What you wanted so badly, but you were just too afraid of what somebody else might think of you. And I know that for a long time, and I'm even now. I mean, I'm working on it, but even now, like I've been that person. Like I've been the person, that I know that answer, but I was so scared of like what other people are gonna say if they turn around and look at me when I end up raising my hand. Are they gonna think I'm a know-it-all, and am I gonna screw up? I was always worried about it. And so there were even instances where, like, maybe I was one of the smartest, so to speak, people in the room, and I knew a lot more about the subject than a lot of the students, and so I'd feel like, they asked to see my papers so that they could use my answers. I'd let them cheat off me, because I guess maybe I had felt a sense of belonging in that way, and it just kind of felt nice to feel included in something. In this book, there's so much. I'm sure I'd have to listen. I'm listening to the audiobook, and I'd have to listen to it a few times to be able to catch everything. But I'm just kind of like getting little bits and pieces there. But something she mentions, and she really makes a valid point on this, is she gives us an example of when we wake up, and before our feet even hit the floor, in the morning, we always, a lot of times we come from a sense of like lacking, like we're not enough. And if you think about it, that's not a very good way to start your day. You get up, you wake up, and you're like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep, I'm gonna be so tired, this is gonna be a terrible day. I'm not gonna have a good day. Like, why would you want that for yourself? Why would you want to start your day off that way? And in a way, we're like conditioning ourselves to react that way when we wake up in the morning. So if you could, maybe change that, and maybe set your alarm on your phone to wake up in the morning and have like a message. I started putting a message on my phone every hour, like reminding myself, like, are you working toward becoming a better version of yourself? Like, just trying to constantly put that in my mind, to try and remind myself that I want to be that 1% better every single day, as opposed to backtracking. Not that that's a problem. Everybody messes up, and you shouldn't beat yourself up for that. But you want to try and be better than you were yesterday. And so one of these other points that was made was about a guy, like an example of somebody that's in a wheelchair, and you think, you think somebody's in a wheelchair, you think, oh, they're helpless, oh, they can't do anything for themselves, oh, they, and that's not always the case. There's some people that are in a wheelchair, they may or may not even have legs, but you look at them and they've got like the upper body strength of a bodybuilder, and you're like, oh my gosh, how in the world did they do that? How did they do that without having legs? How did they? And so then I even find myself thinking about that exact thing, and I'm just like, wow, like how much could I accomplish if I just set my mind, like reminded myself that I can do all of those things, that I just reinforce that somehow, so that I'm always working on improving, always getting better, being better than I was yesterday. And like, I can be that person. Like, I look at that person in the wheelchair and I'm just like, wow. Like, you have to admire somebody like that who can deal with such a setback at some point in their life. At least that's might be what they think when it happened, whatever the event was, and to be able to overcome that, and to be able to just persevere and go to the gym every day, or go, whatever it is, and overcome it. It's incredible. There's so much like emotional trauma, there's so much physical, pain that we go through, and we think we'll never get through it, and it blows my mind, just to see some of these people overcoming all of that. It's interesting. There's another aspect of like vulnerability, and that we, maybe in like an ideal world, we'd love to be able to just open up to people and let everybody know that what we're going through, and talk to them about it, and figure out our issues, and to just be more vulnerable. But that's just, it seems impossible. It seems weak. It just isn't the social norm. But what's interesting that I found out or read about, is that we want to see other people being vulnerable, but we don't like to be vulnerable ourselves. So we really appreciate it, and we praise somebody else who has the courage to get up there and be vulnerable at the front of the classroom, to give a speech, or to put their whole life story out there, or just to open up in ways that they're just terrified to do so. But then, let's say it's your turn, and you just feel like shutting down. You're like, I can't. It's an interesting dynamic, and I'm learning so much about that. And with the people that the author interviewed, in trying to learn about vulnerability, she asked people, she was like, can you define vulnerability for me? And some of the responses that I heard, I just, it really got to me. Like, what do you consider being vulnerable? It's like being able to stand up for yourself, being able to just say I love you to somebody without knowing whether or not the other person's going to say it back. A lot of times it's gut-wrenching to say that, and then the other person doesn't feel the same way. And then also things like admitting when you're wrong and asking for forgiveness from somebody, when you just know it's the right thing to do. That's being vulnerable. And then the author went on, and she was like, how did it make you feel to be vulnerable? And these people, their responses, again, it was like, I felt like I was taking a mask off and hoping that the real me isn't going to disappoint somebody, or it's like taking off a straitjacket. And I'm just like, wow, these people are doing something that, on the surface that doesn't seem like it's very much, seems so simple, but underneath it's like you'd rather die than have to speak these things out loud. It's almost like it's taboo to express your feelings to somebody that you're close to and that you feel like you should be able to be vulnerable with. Another like sayings that really has resonated with me lately, because it's something that I struggled with forever, is if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And so in any instance, like whether somebody asks you to do something, or whether you just opted not to go to the gym, or whatever it is, it's like, even if you didn't say yes or say no, you essentially said no by not saying anything. And so it just never occurred to me that by not saying anything, I was essentially making a choice and just taking the easy route, or the easy way out, instead of taking the road less traveled, so to speak. And I'd just rather just take the easy way out and just take a big sigh of relief and be like, oh, I did not have to deal with that. I'm so glad. But in the end, it just wasn't helping me improve in any way, just by standing in the back and keeping my head down. I just really just wanted to get on here and kind of just let out a little bit of what I've been reading about, and just trying to figure out ways to be more open and just vulnerable, and being willing to take those emotional risks that I wouldn't have before, and not know what happened. Yeah. Thanks so much for listening to me, and I am just gonna keep on forging this path and learning as much as I can, and figuring myself out. I work all day, and then I listen to these podcasts and read books and listen to audiobooks, and it just feels really rewarding. Thank you so much.